Welcome back to Undefendable. We are going to be doing some hot heroes with the Outcasts. They recently just came out. So if you're watching this video years later, they didn't recently just come out. But if you're watching this in 2026, around January, they came out about a month or two ago. Kickstarter was awesome, really enjoying these heroes, and I want to make a guide on how I would play them like a pro. So if I were to take these into a competitive tournament, this is how I would play them. So stay tuned, and we're going to go each hero and see what happens. Welcome back to Undefendable. We are going to be hopping into the Pale Lady. Play like a pro quick guide. First things first, we're going to do a quick introduction. The Pale Lady / Werewolf is an aggro-leaning mid-range hero with explosive swing turns. Your job is simple. Time the flip. Flip from Pale Lady to Werewolf. Pale Lady sets the clock. Werewolf ends the game. If you flip too early or too late, you will lose value. Her leaflet is going to be right here. First things first, one of her unique mechanics is the Moon Shard. These tokens have effects documented on both sides of the hero board. This token may not be removed or transferred by any means except as a result of this hero's ability and cards. Ultimately, your Moon Shards, when you're the Pale Lady, they stack on your side. When you get to 3, you'll end up flipping to the Werewolf, and then at the end of every turn of the Werewolf, you lose a Moon Shard, and when you have no more left, you flip back to the Pale Lady. Bleed is a negative status effect. Your opponent will roll 1 die in their upkeep. On a 1 to 4, they receive 1 damage. Otherwise, they will remove the token. And then Prey. This is a really cool, unique one. Negative status effect that you can have 2 of. 2 bleeds and then 2 Preys. Adds 1 or 2 damage when attacking. So ultimately, you're going to inflict this Prey token onto your opponent. And then after the token is attacked by an opponent, the attacker may roll 1. So if you have 2 Preys on your opponent and you say, hey, I'm going to do Scratch, and they say, cool, you would then roll 1 die for each of these. On a 1, you remove the token completely. Just one of the tokens. On a 1, you would remove it. On a 2 through 5, you add 1 damage. On a 6, you add 2 damage. So really, really nice value engine for the Pale Lady and the Werewolf. If we scroll down just a little bit, her dice are going to be 3 slash, 2 crescent, 1 full moon. So 1, 2, 3, and then 4, 5 crescent, and then 6 is the full moon. Let's check out Pale Lady's abilities, and then we'll also flip and check out the Werewolves as well. Scratch is going to be your basic on the slashes, and then if you get 3 of a kind, you inflict bleed. Big thing is Twilight. That's going to be the Pale Lady's passive. During your upkeep, if you have 3 Moon Shards, flip to the hero board. Which a really cool technique is if you're at 2 Moon Shards, you want to try and get that 3rd Moon Shard over here on your defensive roll when your opponent attacks. So then when it comes back to your upkeep, you would flip to the Werewolf on that turn, right? So nice little pro tip there. The Cure is going to be 3 crescents and 1 full moon. Gain a Moon Shard, a CP, draw a card, 3 HP. Really good Moon Shard engine, and then just kind of helps you sustain while you're trying to flip to the Werewolf. The Hunt, inflict a Prey and then deal 6 damage. Conflicted is gain a Moon Shard and 6 damage for the small. Gain 2 Moon Shards and 8 damage for the large. Full Moon, deal 5 damage and roll 4. On slashes, add 1 on slashes. On Crescent, gain 1 CP or a Moon Shard. On Full Moon, gain 1 CP and a Moon Shard. So ideally your roll here would be 1 full moon, 1 crescent, and 2 slashes. And you could potentially gain a CP, 2 Moon Shards, and deal 7 damage. Also, if you have the Prey on them, you just get more value. So really, really good engine for the Pale Lady. This is probably going to be your chase when you're the Pale Lady if you can't get in Snare. And Hunter as a fallback, and then the Cure as a sustain. But we'll go into a second. Mini ult, gain 2 Moon Shards, inflict 2 Prey, then deal 5 undefendable damage. Very strong, especially as the Pale Lady. And then the her defense is pretty weak. Heal 1 on Crescent, and then on a full moon, gain Moon Shard. And then her ultimate is gain 2 Moon Shards, then flip your hero board and activate your Werewolf's ultimate ability. Okay, So let's flip over to the Werewolf. And then after we go over these abilities, we'll kind of dive into Pale Lady priorities and then Werewolf priorities. So this is where you start to get a lot of your damage. Your basics are going to be slashes, except they're undefendable, and then you inflict bleed on 3. The passive is, at the conclusion of your turn, remove 1 moon shard. Then if you do not have any moon shard, flip your board. That is at the conclusion of your turn, not the upkeep. Rip and Tear, 8 undefendable damage. The Hunter, inflict 2 prey, then deal 7 damage. Sunder is the small and large straight, inflict bleed, and then 8 damage plus 1 per moon shard, and then inflict 2 bleed for the large, 8 damage plus 2 per moon shard, which is absolutely insane. If you're at full moon shard, that's going to be 14 damage and 2 bleed, which is absurdly good. It is defendable, which is something to note. Full Moon Blitz, heal 1 per moon shard, then deal 4 undefendable plus 1 undefendable per moon shard. Jaws of the Wolf, inflict prey and roll 4. On a full moon, gain a moon shard, then deal 5 plus 2 undefendable damage per moon shard. And then the defense of the Werewolf is very, very strong. Deal 1 per slash, inflict bleed on Crescent, and then on full moon, deal 2. So ideally, if your opponent has 2 bleeds, you're rolling 3 slashes and a full moon, and you're dealing back, 5 damage, which is great. And then lastly, the Howl, Unleash the Beast Werewolf. Again, you flip from the Pale Lady after gaining 2 moon shards and do this as well, but if you are the Werewolf, gain 1 moon shard, inflict prey and 2 bleeds, then 13 damage. At the conclusion of your turn, do not remove 1 moon shard per the Twilight passive. Alright, let's dive into the Pale Lady and Werewolf cards. One thing to note, the Pale Lady does not have any upgrade cards, so none of your skills are upgradable, so you're going to have a lot of cards that just do stuff, right? A lot of unique cards that are just going to do things, okay? So, first things first, these ones on the left are ones that I want to talk about a little bit. These ones are going to be situational, and these ones are going to be situational as well, more than likely sellable, okay? First things first, Trick of the Light. This is just a sneaky way for you to get an extra Werewolf turn in. Usually this is used if Werewolf, heal 2 and flip your board. A lot of times if you're the Werewolf and you have 3 shards on you, and your second main phase, you can use this to heal 2 and flip your board over to the Pale Lady. And then immediately on your upkeep next turn as the Pale Lady, you'll flip back to the Werewolf because you'll still have 3 moon shards, right? That's usually how I've used this card. It's been pretty fun, and it's really just kind of a unique way to get you an extra Werewolf turn. Transformation, if Pale Lady, gain a moon shard, then flip your hero board. It is 3 CP, but this gets you to flip exactly when you want to flip. So you can flip if you need to get that extra damage across or do what you need to do. This card's really, really good, really, really strong. This card has been absolutely... I mean, this is just a really good card in my opinion as well. It's 0 CP, and then you roll 5 for each slash. You receive 1 damage, but for each moon you inflict bleed, and each full moon you gain a moon shard. And it's a gain, not an on. So this can really pop off or do nothing. Most of the time you're going to get 1 moon shard, inflicted bleed, and take 3 damage. So still, in my opinion, really strong and really early game value. But it can be situational, right? So like if you already have 2 bleeds on your opponent and you have 2 moon shards, this isn't one that you necessarily need to play, but early game, this is probably one of the best cards you can get. And if you can get lucky and roll like 2 or 3 6s, you are really set for where you're headed. Attack modifiers, Ravage is if Werewolf, receive 1 damage, then roll 5. Most of the time you're going to be dealing at least 4 additional damage from this because you can re-roll up to 5 dice. You can get unlucky, but most of the time I'm adding 4 damage to my attacks for 2 CP, which is always a really, really good value. Ambush. This one's a bit unique. If Pale Lady, remove a moon shard, which normally is not what we want to do for our strategy. But if you need to get a little bit of extra damage across, or maybe you have a 6-it or some way to modify your dice to a 6, you can remove a moon shard and then roll a 6 to add 4 damage and gain a moon shard. Or maybe you can use this as a killing blow. For 1 CP, it's really good in a pinch, especially if you have ways to modify it to a 6 to get that moon shard right back. Etiquette is really good because it punishes big attacks pretty hard. If an opponent is attacking you with at least 10 damage, heal 2 and gain a moon shard. So this one's really, really good, especially as the Pale Lady, to reduce some damage, sustain a little bit longer, and then get that Moonshard engine going. New Moon is one of my favorite cards. This is really a way where, in my experience, you wait until after your defensive roll. Like, you're on 2 Moonshards, your opponent attacks, and let's say you don't roll a 6 to get that 3rd Moonshard. You can sneakily play this out at the end of your opponent's turn to take 1 damage, gain that last Moonshard, and flip during your upkeep to the Werewolf. So I found this card to be very, very strong, in my opinion. However, it can be situational, right? And it's not, some of these aren't beneficial if you're the Werewolf, and some of these aren't beneficial if you're the Pale Lady. So that is something else to take into consideration. Lastly, for strong, high priority cards, Quenched. This is just efficient healing during Werewolf turns. So you heal 1 per Moonshard after you successfully deal damage. So that's always going to be strong. If you can inflict 14 damage and heal for 3, that's just absolutely insane. I put these as situational because a lot of times your opponent's already going to have Prey and Bleed on them when you find these cards. If you do find these cards early, they are very, very strong, right? If you can get 1 to 2 Bleeds on your opponent early game, or 1 to 2 Prey on your opponent early game without needing to roll the abilities, they're very strong. But a lot of times, by the time I get Briarthorn, or I want to spend 1 CP for it, my opponent already has Bleed, and I'm about to flip to the Werewolf, who's going to probably inflict Bleed because the straight is just so insane. So these are going to be situational, but still very strong early game, in my opinion. Waning Moon is pretty good early game. It's a somewhat sustained, somewhat flexible card for 1 CP. I don't know why you wouldn't play it. Roll 1, you either deal 2 damage to your opponent, gain 2 CP, or heal for 2. So not terrible. Life Trade, normally one that I would sell. 0 CP, you take damage to get CP. It's situational, but I've never really ever used this, so this is just a sell in my opinion. Same thing with Petulant. It's rarely worth it to have your opponent pay you a CP, because they're always going to do that. I guess if they're at 0 CP, you can flip your hero board, but most of the time, I haven't found a use case for this where the situation was right. So I would sell to get the CP to play stronger cards. And then Waxing Moon, again, for it's 3 CP, so it is strong because you can potentially deal 4 damage, draw 2, or gain a Moonshard. But for 3 CP, it can be a little bit overpriced. I'm not saying sell it, but you got to have a lot of CP and feel comfortable with where you're at to want to play this. Because I don't think this is the same value as a Twice as Wild or a 6-It and a So Wild, right? So if we're comparing the value of Waxing Moon versus like dice mods and things like that, I think this is pretty overpriced, but it can be situational if you need to get a little extra damage in your second main phase, or you're trying to, get a little bit more cards or an extra Moonshard in fallback as 4 damage. Sure, and you have a lot of CP, but it's just going to be a situational card when we're talking about these unique cards. So let's go ahead and hop into game plan. All right, so game plan on the Pale Lady. Traditionally, your main goal as the Pale Lady is to try and time your flip to get to the Werewolf, right? If I were to prioritize my best engine for shards and damage, Full Moon is going to be where I want to head, right? I'm going to be able... let me zoom in a little bit on this. Full Moon is really going to be your best value engine because it's going to do everything that the Pale Lady wants to do. It's going to deal a little bit of damage. You should gain Moonshards and or CP and or both. Worst case scenario, you're doing 9 damage, which isn't terrible. But a lot of times you're going to get a Moonshard and deal 8. Or get a Moonshard, a CP, and a Moonshard, 2 Moonshards. So this is just going to be your best value engine. If you can push for Ensnare, this is just absolutely critical or amazing as the Pale Lady. This is going to be really strong with the 2 Moonshards, the Prey, and the 5 damage. Really sets you up to get to that Werewolf a little bit quicker. And it's undefendable damage and pressure, which is really strong. Next, I would say your priority is going to be, or your engine's going to be Full Moon. If you can get to Ensnare or your large straight, those are going to be really good values for Moonshards and damage. So that's going to be kind of the quote-unquote priorities. You can use Hunt as a fallback. This is going to delay your shard game so you can time your Werewolf turn a little bit more correctly. but also adding that prey onto your opponent early just gets you that little bit additional value as the Pale Lady that you may not get elsewhere. And then the Cure is really kind of more of a defensive dodge mechanic, shard generation, economy turn. So worst case scenario, if you can't get to full moon or ensnare and you're not finding your large straights, the Cure and the Hunt are going to be your fallback options. Depending on your matchups would really depend on where you want to go with the Cure or the Hunt. The Cure I would play against maybe slower champions where I have a little bit more time to sustain and grow and get cards and get moon shards. The Hunt is if I want to be a little bit more aggressive against those slow champions and try and do as much damage as I can. So let's go ahead and flip over to the Werewolf. And the Werewolf, this is a really, really fun side of the board in my opinion, because you have so much value, but you also have to try and time this, right? So the straight early on is going to be extremely strong because it inflicts bleed and then deals damage based on the moon shards you have. So at the end of your turn, you lose moon shards. So if you can flip to the Werewolf and then hit a large straight and your opponent doesn't have any bleeds on themselves, you're doing 14 defendable damage and 2 bleeds, which is absolutely insane, right? Same with the small straight. Even if you have to settle for the small straight, you're still inflicting a bleed and doing 11 defendable damage, which is just insane value for a small straight, which is really, really nice and easy to get typically. Full Moon Blitz. This is best early Werewolf turn options. So if it's early on, you can heal and deal undefendable damage. This is a nice way to kind of sustain your turn out and sustain with the healing factor here. Rip and Tear, this is just clean undefendable damage, a really good closing ability. Jaws of the Wolf basically gives you an extra turn and is potentially a win condition, right? You gain a moon shard, you get an extra turn as the Werewolf, and you're dealing a ton of undefendable damage while inflicting the prey. Very, very, very strong. And then also your defense. This is just forces opponents to either dodge it or die, right? If they can't do undefendable damage, they are going to take a lot of damage from your defense. So by being on the Werewolf side, your opponent definitely does not want to swing into this with defendable damage or anything. So a lot of times when you're on the Werewolf side, you're dealing a ton of damage with your attacks and your defense, or you're dealing a ton of damage with your attacks and you're somewhat sustaining because your opponent's not going to want to swing into this defense where they could potentially take up to 5 damage back on your turn, right? Or on their turn. So imagine a turn where you do a large straight for 14 damage and 2 bleeds, and then they also swing into you and you deal 5 back. That's 19 damage and 2 bleeds. That's 20 damage, potentially, in one turn. 20 damage in one turn. Absolutely busted. I love it. Let's go over game plan for Pale Lady now. Hold on. So somewhat leaning into what I talked about with your priorities, the Pale Lady's game plan is relatively simple. You're either going to, slow the game down with Cure to sustain a little bit. You're going to use the Hunt early to delay flipping if you need to, but you're really prioritizing your mini ult and ultimate as the Pale Lady. If you can save dice mods and get an ultimate on your first or second turn and flip and do that, that's very, very strong. I would strongly urge you to use dice mods on your Pale Lady turn to try and get your mini ult or ult early on in the game if you want to be aggressive. Also, if you do your mini ult, you can save a dice mod for your defense to try and get that third moon shard to go ahead and flip to the Werewolf when you want to. As the Werewolf, your phases are really just going to be about maximizing damage every turn because you only get a few of them, right? You're only going to get 3, maybe 4 turns with the Werewolf, so you want to make sure you're not overstacking bleeds or praise. You want to make sure that you're really prioritizing these straights without overstacking. Early game, you're going to want to prioritize Full Moon Blitz to get that extra little bit of heal. And then you can use Rip and Tear late when your scaling falls off and when you want to close out the game with undefendable damage. And again, make sure you're tracking your bleeds to avoid overstacking before your defensive turns, right? Because on your defense, you can also inflict bleed. So, you don't need to push for the large straight if your opponent already has a bleed on them, because you're likely going to inflict a bleed on your defense. So that's really what I would say with the Werewolf, is he does a lot of bleeds. So make sure that you're tracking your bleeds properly, and you're not necessarily overvaluing the effective bleed, because you're likely going to get it through one of your abilities. Matchup wise, the Pale Lady is going to be strong against mid-range heroes, heroes without easy undefendable access, because they're going to be swinging into that werewolf defense, and anyone who can't dodge werewolf's defense. So heroes without easy undefendable access that have to swing into your defense when you're the werewolf, the Pale Lady is going to be strong against those heroes. I would say the Pale Lady's weakness is going to be against rush down aggro heroes, ones that where they can do a lot of damage before she can flip to werewolf. She may also be weak against control heroes, ones that can really disrupt the shard timing, ones that can manipulate your dice a little bit easier. She might have a little bit of a struggle with. And then heroes that can dodge defenses, or defense dodging specialists, ones that can dodge attacks, dodge defenses, get undefendable opportunities, and really find ways around swinging into that strong defense that the Pale Lady has. And lastly, let's go over a few roll examples. I shuffled all the cards back into here so we can kind of get an idea of what we're working with. These aren't the greatest cards to start out with, but we'll kind of go over the game plan, right? So as the Pale Lady, I'm going to prioritize the crescents, because that's going to be really where I want to head with the cure, the full moon, and then potentially ensnares with the 6s. I don't really have any dice mods in my hands, so I am going to keep a 5 here, because I still want to try and push for full moon if I can get it, because that's my engine, but I'm okay with falling back into the cure, or maybe stumbling into straight potential, right? So now we have 3, 4, 5, 6. That's not a terrible value. I do have try again. I am also close to the cure. So even in this scenario, I think I'm going to keep the 4, 5, and 6, knowing that I have try again in my hand and see what I can get out. We do not end up getting full moon or the cure, but we do have the small straight. So we're going to go ahead and cast that and do 6 damage to our opponent. All right, they're going to come back over to us. Let's say, hypothetically, actually, here we go. They came at us with Defendable. We're going to roll. We heal for 3. We do not gain a moon shard, which is unfortunate. And let's say we just take the average, which is right around 7 damage, okay? Oh, my thing tilted a little bit. There we go. Now we gained a CP, drew a card, and we actually have Transformation, which is really, really strong here. I can gain a moon shard, then flip my board right now if I wanted to. And you know what? Just for the purpose of this video, let's go ahead and do it. And then I can actually flip right back with Trick of the Light if I wanted to. So flip, deal damage, flip back, get heal, and then potentially set up for not losing any moon shards there. So let's go ahead and play Transformation for 3 CP. So I am going to gain a moon shard, and then I'm going to immediately flip to my werewolf board. Now I have 2 moon shards. I want to prioritize full moon for the healing or the straights to get those bleeds on, and then see where this takes me. So let's go ahead and roll over. Okay, that's not a bad starting roll. We're prioritizing the crescents. I mean, obviously the straights are going to be strong, but we went ahead and we got the full moon on our second roll. And they're going to say, yeah, go ahead. So I'm going to heal for 2, and then I'm going to deal 6 undefendable damage to my opponent. Okay, so now we're at 48, which is pretty strong. I'm currently on the werewolf, and now I do have an opportunity to flip back to the Pale Lady if I sell one of these cards in my second main phase. But it's really going to depend on my matchup. If my opponent has to swing into my defense really consistently, I may stay on the werewolf a few turns to get that extra value here and keep the pressure on. But just for the purposes of showing you how this would work, I'm going to sell bye-bye for 1 CP, and then I'm going to play Trick of the Light, 1 CP, and then I'll play Trick of the Light, if werewolf, heal 2, and then flip back 2, and then and flip your hero board. So now I'm back to the Pale Lady, but I got to keep my 2 moon shards on me there, which is really, really strong. So now my opponent's going to swing into me again, and now we're hoping to get that 6 on our defense. Hey, we did it. So we're going to heal 1, and we're going to gain that 3rd moon shard piece, and then let's say we're going to take 7. So you can see where that sustain comes in, right? The sustain from the heals and the full moons and things like that. Now, obviously I'm at 0 CP here. That wouldn't be an ideal turn, but hopefully you got to kind of see how some of the mechanics worked there. So now they're going to pass over to me, and in my upkeep, since I have 3 moon shards, I'm going to flip right back over to the werewolf. So these 2 cards actually, the Trick of the Light and the Transformation, actually got me an additional turn as the werewolf to heal and deal some undefendable damage. Now that we're the werewolf with 3 moon shards, we're going to gain a CP and draw. We got that new moon, which again I said was situational. Unfortunately here, it's not really super valuable unless we decide to switch back. So we're going to go ahead and roll. Again, I think we're still prioritizing full moon, but we are totally fine with falling into a small straight. That being said, I'm going to keep the 3 and the 4. Actually, no, I'm just going to keep the 4 here. Because again, we want to try and pressure that as much as we can. And what do you know? We end up rolling into the large straight. Now, my opponent may use a dice mod here, but since I don't have an opponent, we're going to inflict 2 bleeds, and we're going to deal 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14 damage in 2 bleeds. Absolutely absurd. I love it. Goes over to my opponent. Let's say they take both the bleeds and they want to come back at me into my defense. So we just dealt 14 damage and 2 bleed, which is actually 16 damage total. And we're going to... Now this is where the bleed stack I was talking about. So I would inflict bleed there, but since they already have 2, let's say hypothetically they rolled 1 and got 1 off. This would actually apply a new bleed. I would deal 3 damage, 3 damage back to them. So that's 19 damage in 1 turn. I would have lost a moon shard from the end of my turn. As the werewolf, which is just absolutely amazing and great to feel. And then let's just say we would take potentially 7, maybe a little more damage that turn. So that's how you play the Pale Lady. Thank you guys for watching. Really appreciate it. And don't be afraid to like, comment, and subscribe. Welcome back to Undefendable. We're going to be diving into the Necromancer, keeping up with our Outcast theme. Necromancer is a mid-range engine hero. You spend early turns building an undead army plus corpses for your economy. Then you snowball into double-digit damage while threatening an extra life with Resurrect. Very hard hero to play, but has huge, huge payoffs. Let's dive into the leaflet. The Necromancer has 2 leaflets. The first one we're going to go over, let's do the undead army first, right? So summoning undead. Undead are summoned by spending corpses during your main phase. Whenever an undead is summoned, place it on your hero board. You cannot summon more undead than the limits noted below. So limit 3, 1, 1, right? Activating undead. Each summoned undead has an ability that can be activated once per turn. At the conclusion of your roll phase, roll 1 for each undead that was activated. For every bone rolled, remove 1 undead of your choosing. So ultimately, you're going to build a little army. You're going to use them during your offensive roll phases. And then after your offensive roll phase, you're going to roll dice for how many you used. And then if any of those dice are bones, they go back over to here and off of your board. And then you have to rebuild them back up. Skeletal Warrior is 2 corpses. A limit of 3 adds 1 damage as an attack modifier. The Bone Spear. Skeletal Mage is pretty cool. 3 corpses to summon him. 1 limit. And he has the option of 2 abilities. You can either Withering, inflict Decrepify onto your opponent, or you can Scything Touch, steal 1 health during your roll phase. Can only be used if you activated 3 Skeletal Warriors this turn. So very important. You cannot do Scything Touch if you only have 2 Skeletal Warriors on the board, right? Bone Golem, 6 corpses. This is your big baddie, 1 limit. He adds 2 damage every attack with Bone Spur. And then when attacked, you may remove the Bone Golem to deal 2 damage back to your opponent and prevent 2 damage. Now let's go over to this one, the Corpse Style. Corpses are unique resources that may be spent for a variety of effects during your main phase. 2 corpses to summon a Skeletal Warrior. 3 corpses to summon a Skeletal Mage. 6 corpses to get a Bone Golem. And then you can spend 10 corpses to gain Resurrect, which is going to be one of your ways of sustaining the late game. The Necromancer also has a unique, if this hasn't already been unique enough, he has a unique card or passive called the Unearth card. So during your upkeep phase, you must move your Unearth card to cover a different offensive ability on your hero board. After moving this card, gain the number of corpses noted in the upper right corner of the covered ability. While an ability is covered, it cannot be activated. So you can kind of see that like right up here. So if you were to move your unearth card during your upkeep phase to sheer, you would gain 2 corpses by doing that. Decrepify, which you can inflict from some abilities or your skeletal mage, is ultimately during your next offensive roll phase. It's during your opponent. Your opponent afflicted with this token may only re-roll a maximum of 2 dice when performing any roll attempt after their first roll attempt. Additionally, reduce any attack damage by 1. At the conclusion of the roll phase, remove this token. So basically, if you afflict this with your opponent and they roll 5 dice, they can only roll 2 dice when performing any additional roll attempts that turn. Okay? So pretty strong if you want to try and control some dice on your opponent's side, which is really good. Resurrect. This is like the poor man's paladin ability, which is blessings. What is the name of it? Holy blessings. I can't remember the name of it. But ultimately, at the end of your turn, instead of being defeated, become a lifeless husk of your former self. The next time a player with this token would have their hero reduced to 0, instead, remove this token, set your health to 5. But then, that player can no longer gain or spend CP, and additionally, if that player has any cards, they must discard them all, and can no longer draw cards for the remainder of the game. This token may not be removed or transferred by any other means. So ultimately, when you die, your resurrect would activate, you'd go to 5 health, but you would no longer be able to play cards or CP. So that's how that all works. And that is the Necromancer's leaflet. All right, let's go over the Necromancer's abilities really quickly. And what you'll notice in the top right, this is going to be the little corpse. So when you put the Unearth card during your upkeep over these abilities, you would gain that much corpse in your corpse tile to spend later on. One thing to note, everything is 2 except for your mini alt, but at the beginning of the game, this card starts on your mini alt. So you have to move it off of your mini alt at the start of the game because it starts here. So your upkeep happens, you would then move it somewhere else, and then you would gain the corpses based on that, but it always starts on your mini ultimate Black Shroud. Necromancer's basic, 3, 4, 5, sheer, defendable. Reanimate, gain 3 corpses. On 3 bones, on 5 bones, gain 4 corpses. Then you may immediately spend corpses. Any undead summoned in this way costs 1 less corpse. Harvest, gain 1 corpse and then roll and then do the effect associated with that roll. If you can hit some 6s, you get some extra value. Kind of like the Tacticianer. If you roll a 6, you gain a corpse, then immediately begin an additional roll phase, which is really, really strong. Corpse Explosion. This is going to be deal 4 damage and spend up to 3 corpses to roll 1 dice for each corpse spent. And then you get these additional modifications. You're really going to want to do this when you have at least 3 corpses to spare, because this is going to be really, really strong damage, especially if you have your bone army on the board. We have Blight, which is your small straight and large straight. Gain a corpse, do 5. Gain 2 corpses, inflict Decrepify, then deal 7. Dead Man's Party deals 6 damage. You do not have to roll for any undead activated this turn, which is at the end of your roll phase, you roll to see which ones die or stay alive. Black Shroud is your mini. Choose one, summon any one undead, or gain 3 corpses, then deal 4 undefendable damage. And then your defense, resist death. You either build corpses on bones or steal 1 health on a 6. Lastly, the ultimate, gain resurrect, inflict Decrepify, then deal 10 damage. You do not have to roll for your undead to activate this. And one thing you'll notice is a lot of his damage seems pretty low, and that's because a lot of your additional damage is going to come from your undead army when you activate these. All right, so let's go ahead and hop into some of his unique cards and upgrade cards. All right, let's go on to the unique cards and then the upgrade cards. First things first, unique cards. We are going to talk about Bon Appetit. Very just useful card. It's cheap for 1 CP. Worst case scenario, you're gaining 2 corpse, which is always a good value, but you could draw 2 or inflict Decrepify and steal 1 health from a chosen opponent. So very good value for 1 CP. Go-Go Golem can be situational. Early game, if you have the CP, this is a very, very strong card. Late game, it definitely falls off because you should have built your golem at a certain point. So after the early game, this gets pretty bad, but early game, this is strong if you can get that bone golem out quickly. Fractured magic, totally fine. It's not necessarily busted. There is some synergy pieces here where you could, potentially use it to get rid of a deadly shrapnel, or summon one and then do deadly shrapnel when you're being attacked to add 3 damage. But oftentimes you can sell this unless you really see a line to use it. For 2 CP and a skeletal mage you should have already. It's situational. Death Manual, 2 CP for 2 skeletal warriors. Pretty good. Definitely always nice to get that value there. Efficient summoning without having to use corpses is always great. Deadly Shrapnel, very strong. Could be a good finisher for 0 CP. It turns your corpses into damage from your skeletal mage, which is also really good. Sturdy Bones, this is going to be one that saves you from catastrophic undead rolls. So you're going to have like 5 undead out on the board, and you're going to roll for that undead roll and roll 5 skulls or 5 bones and be like, what the hell just happened? This can save you from those devastating, catastrophic undead rolls. So definitely something you should hold on to, just in case you need it. This is a just in case card or an oh shit card, right? And then Bone Armor, very strong. You want to hold this for the this would kill me moments, because you can remove up to 2 undead, then prevent 2 damage per undead removed. So if you have 2 of the soldiers on board and a bone golem, you could effectively deal 2 back and prevent up to 6 with bone armor as well. Now, all the upgrades are fine, and this is what I want to say about the upgrades. The reason why I would elect to even upgrade some weaker ones, like just in general, is because of the dial in the top right. All of your skills will have +1 to your corpse when you cover it with the Unearth card, right? And that is where a lot of the value comes in, except for the defense. So like early game, if I have like 1 CP, or if I have, most of these are 2, unfortunately, but you may want to just go ahead and upgrade 1 or 2 of these, because it's going to get you additional value from your Unearth card. A lot of your abilities are going to revolve around Reanimate. If you can get this early, turn 1, this is absolutely amazing. If you can get this early turn 1, because you're going to want to really blow up your corpses and summon a lot, this is a really, really great one. Your Small Straight is going to be a really good engine for once you start getting going and getting your bodies out there. Small Straights are going to be a really good value engine. Don't sleep on Sheer. Sheer can be really, really strong if you have your army going. You can do a lot of solid damage, which is really great. Black Shroud, this is one that's like not necessarily one you roll for, but with 4+4 to your corpses, that's a really, really strong upgrade. Harvest is really just a fallback, but again, this is a good one that you can cover to get with Unearth to get an additional corpse. Corpse Explosion is going to be really your game ender, especially if you can land Disentomb into Corpse Explosion. That's a really good combo, and for 1 CP, this is a really strong one. Resist Death is fine. Instead of just being on a 6, steal 1 health, this just steals 1 health per 6. So you can really start to get some value from this early. If you start rolling it and rolling additional dice and getting those 6s, you can start to really suck life out of your opponent. And then Dead Man's Party. Dead Man's Party itself is a really, really good ability because you don't have to do your undead roll, which gets you closer to those 10 corpses so you can get the resurrect token. But it also gives you a really nice fallback and creeper to help kind of prevent whiffable turns and things like that. So that's kind of the cards there. Let's go ahead and hop into a little bit of game plan. All right, game plan wise, Necromancer is going to fall into the, phases, heroes I would call them, where you have a setup phase, a stabilize phase, and then a closeout phase. So he's really revolving around early game getting reanimation, so you can set up your warriors and your mages ASAP. You can use Harvest as a fallback, which isn't amazing, but if you do happen to hit a 6, there's a really good upside there. If Black Shroud falls into your lap, absolutely take it. And then you're moving into your mid game, which is going to be your straights, your Blight, which is going to be your bread and butter. Mid to late game, Blight for consistency. This is consistent damage and corpse growth, especially if you can upgrade it. The large straight is very, very strong. Dead Man's Game is really high value, and it saves your corpses by reducing the undead roll cost, which is nice. So when it falls on your table, you can definitely chase this, no problem, especially with the abilities and the sixes that you might be getting otherwise. And then again, late game, Corpse Explosion is going to be your closer because it can just do some pretty crazy damage at the cost of spending some corpse, but it can also become undefendable, which is really, really strong. And then don't sleep on sheer, right? This is surprisingly solid. When straights and sixes just aren't cooperating, you don't need to get cute. You can always go sheer. And if you have your army out there, you're going to be able to do a pretty good amount, a pretty good chunk of damage, right? So setup phase, Unearth is usually going to start on it always starts on Black Shroud. Most of the time, early game, I'm going to move it to Dead Man's Party because this isn't one you necessarily need turn 1 because you're not going to have any of your undead out. So you move it here and you would gain 2 corpses from moving it there, which is really, really nice. And then from there, usually you really turn 1 want to aggressively go for Reanimate to build your army as quickly as possible. If you can get some good Reanimate rolls, you can typically summon out your warriors and your mages turn 1, worst case by turn 2. The second phase is going to be your Stabilize phase. This is where you start stacking those corpses, getting this corpse style really, really high up. And then you want to play 1 or 2 upgrades, as I mentioned earlier. Even if they're not that great, it just gives you that additional value. That instead of being 2 or 3, it would become 3 or 4 in that process. Hopefully by turn 3, you're going to have your big bone golem out on the board, and he's going to be able to just start adding that damage and adding that defense if you need it as well. And then you're going to move into the closeout phase. The closeout phase is at usually 6+ corpses. You want to start thinking about overstacking risk, right? Getting corpses on your defense. You don't want to overstack your corpses. You always want to make sure you have value there. So this is where you can start really hammering down on Corpse Explosion, using the Bone Golem to pop it and then resummon it. You could even cash in 10 corpses to get a Resurrect if you don't get to chase your ult. And that's really kind of your end game, is try and get Resurrect online or try and get your Bone Golem dealing damage and preventing damage if you can continually start to resummon him. And that's really how you play Necromancer. Matchup wise, the Necromancer is going to be strong into, I would say, fair heroes that can't overvalue you fast enough, right? So heroes that are going to be slightly not extremely fast and not blow up in your face, but ones that you can just outvalue with your corpses and your damage and your building and things like that. Necromancer is also going to be strong into heroes that don't punish your early setup turns. So if you have 1 or 2 turns to get set up and you're not going down to like 27 health because your defense isn't that great, that's going to give you an opportunity, right? So like Jean Grey, for example, has to set up just like you. And a lot of times you can set up, and if you get that 1 or 2 turns to get your engine going, you're going to be relatively in the battle and competitive. A Necromancer is going to struggle into big defensive heroes, right? You lack consistent Undefendable. Like, you can do Undefendable here, but it's not consistent, and then really your only other Undefendable is going to be your mini and your ult. So, if you're going into big defensive heroes like Paladin, Werewolf, things like that, you're going to struggle because you're going to be taking a lot of damage back. Necromancer can also struggle into heroes that can do a lot of prevention of damage, so like agilities, evades, smoke bombs, things like that. Ways to have your big swings, right? So even like protects, Necromancer is going to struggle because, again, there's no way for you to stop the bleeding, but if they can slow you down once your engine's going, it might be a tough little ride for the Necromancer. And then any heroes that have maybe even some disruption, like clever disruption, like knockdown tokens, things that can mess with like your resurrection timing and things like that, Necromancer may struggle into. So let's go ahead and do maybe 1 or 2 turns so you can see how it works. Alright, so let's go through a few roll examples and then maybe just a couple of turns with the Necromancer. Pretty good start here for what we're looking at. We do have the Unearth here, so during our upkeep we're going to need to move that. We're going to move it over to Dead Man's Party because there's not much we can do with Dead Man's Party this early on. And our main goal, again, is to just get reanimate and start summoning a bunch of little skeleton guys. So at this point, none of these upgrades are going to be that great. The samesies is kind of interesting if we can get that additional bone. Sorry. So let's go ahead and roll, and we're going to aggressively be going for reanimate. That is a very unfortunate start. And again, sheer is good value, but you need your army on the board first. So this is one where I'd throw everything back. And this is really, really, really testing us. I think I'm still going to aggressively go for this, unfortunately, and see what happens. And that is very unfortunate. That's usually not how you want to do it. You would have a 3 damage sheer, but this is even one where maybe I would pass. Or I would spend this to get the samesies and then go with reanimate. Usually turn 1, your opponent's pretty, timid about using dice mods this early. So we're going to gain 3 corpses. Then you may immediately spend corpses. Any undead summoned in this way costs 1 less corpse. So since we have 5, these guys now only cost 1 instead of 2 corpse because of the ability. So 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. And then this usually costs 3, but instead it's going to cost 2. So now we have our undead army online already, which is absolutely fantastic going into our next turn. So let's say our opponent attacks into us for 7. We're going to roll, and we're going to steal a health because we rolled a 6, and then we're going to gain 2 corpses, which is actually very, very, very strong. And then we would take 7 damage, and then they'd pass it over to us. And now we have to move this unearth card. So now we have our army online, and we have things working for us. And this is where we really kind of want to be, curious of where we're putting this. So I'm going to put it on the reanimate, because I already have my army up and going, and then I'm going to gain 2 corpses for that, a CP, and draw to get this thing going. Whoa, we zoomed all the way out. Hold on, let's get locked back in. Sorry about that. Okay, there we go. All right, so now we have to get that out of here, the blight, and this is where, I don't have my bone golem up yet, and he costs 6 to summon. This might be one where I want to upgrade my blight. This might be one where I want to upgrade my sheer. Why do I keep hitting the space bar? I am so sorry. Oh my gosh, what is happening here? Ay, ay, ay. Don't watch this noob. He doesn't know what he's doing. Okay, so now we're back. Sorry about that. So this is where, the board gets a little bit interesting, right? So, oh, I know what it is. I'm trying to alt, and I'm hitting the spacebar instead. Now, this is one where, sheer's not bad, right? If I can get max sights with 3 of a kind, I get a corpse, and I deal 6, 7, 8, 9, and steal a health, 10 damage. That's not bad for a first turn. But this is one where, we may want to go for Dead Man's Party, things that are going to align with our strategy. So, I am going to actually upgrade Blight here. I'm going to sell, get that out of here, so that I'm not going into my roll phase with no CP, and then I'm going to roll. All right, so we have 1, 2, 3, 5, 6. We're close to Corpse Explosion. We do have Harvest, which isn't terrible here, right? But I don't think Dead Man's Party has necessarily fallen into our lap, so I am going to keep a 3 and a 5 with Corpse Explosion as a somewhat decent fallback, and we're going to roll again. All right, we do have the small straight with 3, 4, 5, 6, so we're going to go ahead and lock in that small straight. So now this is where things get interesting. We're going to gain 2 corpses, and then we're going to do 5 damage plus 1, 2, 3, so 5, 6, 7, 8 damage, and then we're going to either inflict a Decrepify or steal a health. I'm going to steal a health. So we're doing 5, 6, 7, 8, and a health steal for 9, which is really, really, really strong. And now, going into our second main phase, we're at 6 corpses. We're going to spend that and summon our Bone Golem. And now we have our whole line. Now, at the end of that, before I do that, we do need to, at the end of the offensive roll phase, roll to see how many skeletons we lose. Ooh, that is very bad. That's rough. So we actually would lose 3 skeletons here, which is not ideal. That is not a great roll. I'm still going to summon the Bone Golem. going into that next turn, and then pass. So that was not an ideal situation where that happens, but hey, that's the game. So now we're going to grab these for our defensive roll, and we are going to gain 1 corpse, and then we're going to take 7, and then they're going to pass it over to us. We are going to move the Unearth over to Black Shroud to gain 3 corpses, gain a CP, and draw. And as you can see, corpses are very important, right? They are a very important thing to have because we need them to summon our guys. So now we're here in our main phase. We're going to summon 2 skeletons. And instead of costing 1, they cost 2 because we didn't summon them with Reanimate. And one thing to note, I cannot do the Scything Touch because I do not have 3 Skeletal Warriors. I can only do the Decrepify, which is totally fine because we do have the big golem on the board. So let's go ahead and roll. We do have some stability with So Wild here and Sixit, and let's see what we can get. All right, 1, 2, 3, 4 is pretty good. Let's go one more time. We end up getting the large straight, which is fantastic. We're going to lock that in. Slightly some value lost here because we do inflict Decrepify, and this inflicts Decrepify. So, but what that happens is now we don't have to roll the additional die for our undead roll. So we're going to gain 3 corpses, 1, 2, 3. We're going to inflict Decrepify on our opponent, and then we're going to do 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 defendable damage to our opponent. Now, at the end of this, since I only used these 3 for the attack, I only need to roll 3 undead dice, since I didn't use the Skeletal Mage. Oy, man, they are killing us with these. These are rough. So we lose 2 of our Skeletal Warriors there, which is unfortunate. But that's okay. They have Decrepify, and now we're here. At the end of this, I might as well just summon that Skeleton Warrior in my second main phase and pass. Let's go ahead and roll our defense. We steal a health, but we do not actually get any corpses, which is rough, and then we're going to take 7. There we go. They're going to pass it over to us. We're going to move us actually onto, and this is where upgrading the Shear might have come in handy, because I could have moved it there to gain 3, but I'm actually going to move it onto my Blight, even though that's my engine, to get 3 so that I can actually summon out the rest of my soldiers to start this turn. So it's a little bit of a dangerous process, but we do have some fallbacks on what we need to do. We'll go ahead and draw a card, and we got that Fractured Magic there. And now we need to go into the next phase. So we have all of our skeletons on board. We're feeling okay there. We can do some pretty decent damage. But I did cover this. So this is one where maybe I do want to upgrade my Shear, which I think I will for 2. I'm going to sell this Fractured to get the CP back, and then we're going to roll. Really using Shear as that fallback. But we're actually really close to Dead Man's Game. So let's go ahead and try that. And we get Dead Man's Game roll 2. So this is really cool because it's 6 damage, and then I do not have to roll my dice for my undead activated roll. So we're going to do 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and steal a health for 12 damage to our opponent. So you can see where that value starts to come in. And now I don't have to roll my dice for my undead roll because I rolled Dead Man's Party, which is fantastic. That's exactly what we were looking for. And now we can start really honing in on building these corpse tiles up or pushing for that resurrection, right? So they're going to swing back at us. We're going to roll our dice. We're going to steal a health and gain a corpse and then take, let's just say this one was 9. So we're getting down. We're getting down. So now we really want to start pushing for that resurrect, but we've also been pushing out a lot of damage, which is really good as well. We're going to move the Unearth over to let's move it over to Shear. We're going to gain 3 because it's upgraded a CP and draw. Ooh, nice. And now we have the Sturdy Bones. So if our roll is actually really terrible, we can continue. So now I don't have anything that I need to build, and I can continue to push this corpse tile up to 10, hopefully, so that I can just cash it in for a resurrect if I can't find my ultimate here. So let's go ahead and roll. And that's another, look at that. I mean, we've basically fallen into Dead Man's Game, or Dead Man's Party almost again. If I do want to push out some damage, Corpse Explosion could be really good, right? If I'm at a point where it's like, okay, I really need to put the pressure on, let's go with Corpse Explosion. But I'm going to roll for Dead Man's Game again. We don't get it there. So now, depending on my dice and where my opponent's at and blah, 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 I may just go Corpse Explosion, or I may try and roll one more time. But for the purposes of the video, you guys haven't seen Corpse Explosion yet, so let's go ahead and do Corpse Explosion. Deal 4 damage and spend up to 3 corpses, 1, 2, 3, to roll 1 dice for each corpse spent. So now I spent 3 corpses, so I'm doing 4 plus, beautiful, 4, 5, 6, 7, undefendable damage, right? If you look at that down there in the bottom left, deal 4 damage and then roll 3 based on the corpse. So I'm dealing 1, 2, 3, plus 4, 7 damage, and it becomes undefendable because I rolled a 6. So it's 7 undefendable, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 undefendable. 7, 8, 9, 10, 12 undefendable damage. Fantastic. And I have the option of inflicting Decrepify or stealing health. I'm going to steal a health. And that is some of the absurd explosion you can do with the Necromancer. So now at the end of this roll, since I used all 5 of them, this is where that Sturdy Bones is going to come in handy. We need to do our undead roll. So let's go ahead and roll it. All right, so we rolled 3 bones, which is not good. Play only after rolling dice for each undead that was activated. You may reroll up to 3 dice. It can be the same die or different die in any order. Okay, so we're going to spend this in hopes of, gosh, I hate that it does that, in hopes of not losing our Skelly Boys. So we're going to roll 1, we lose them. Okay, so instead of losing 3, we lose 2, which is not ideal, but it's better than nothing. Now, ideally, this would have been like this. We would have kept our Skelly Boys up, and we would have been fat and happy, but we are where we are. Long story short, sorry, that was a little bit more explanation with the Necromancer on how to play him, but appreciate it. Thank you for watching. Like, comment, and subscribe, and we'll catch you next time. Welcome back into Undefendable. We're going to be doing the Headless Horseman, part of our Outcast series. Overview. Headless Horseman is aggro with math. You win by turning a bunch of small actions into damage. Dreadful count, cracked defense, terrorize, bursts, grim pursuit pings, and you steal games with Spectral Assault at the right time. Let's go ahead and go over his leaflet. Alright, Haunted Head is a companion, meaning it cannot be removed or transferred. Use your pumpkin head to frighten an opponent. At the conclusion of your turn, if an opponent has the Haunted Head, you gain a Dreadful. Terrorize an opponent. You may terrorize an opponent during your upkeep phase when you have at least 4 Dreadful tokens. When an opponent is terrorized, remove 4 Dreadful tokens, move the Haunted Head back to your hero board if it's not already there, deal 3 as an isolated source of undefendable damage to the opponent, and gain a Grim Pursuit and 1 CP. This is going to be a big part of your game plan, is this Haunted Head. Dreadful. Boosts various abilities. These tokens affect various abilities, including when you can terrorize an opponent. So this is the ability that if you stack this to 4, you use these Dreadfuls to cash in the Haunted Head Terrorize move. But this also will boost abilities like your Spectral Assault and your defense to give you better defense or stronger abilities, right? And then lastly, Grim Pursuit is a positive status effect up to 3, Dreadfuls up to 5. And this increases attack damage or gains reroll attempts. You're always going to use this as an attack damage modifier first, and then only use as a roll attempt if you absolutely have to. A player with this token may spend it to activate one of the following effects. Perform an additional roll attempt during your offensive roll phase. After attacking, roll 5, add 1 damage per horseshoe. As an attack modifier, each effect may only be activated once per turn. Alright, let's hop into the Headless Horseman's abilities. The abilities are going to be Cleave as your basic. 4 of a kind gains you a Dreadful. Let's talk about Reap, which is going to be 2 Dreadful, 3 undefendable damage, and if you have the Haunted Head, draw 1 card, right here. Ride down, gain 2 Grim Pursuits, then deal 6 damage. And I want to spend a little bit of time on the passive. Headless Mayhem is a passive. During your upkeep, you may choose one. So if you have 4 Dreadful on your board, you may terrorize an opponent, or move the head to a chosen player. If moved to an opponent, gain Dreadful. If your offensive roll phase does not successfully deal at least 1 damage, gain a Grim Pursuit. So ultimately, if you whiff, is basically what this is saying, you will gain a Grim Pursuit. But this is when you would do the Terrorize. And a lot of our strategy is timing around terrorizing and gaining Dreadful, etc. So we'll kind of walk through that in the next part of this. Sow Despair, gain Dreadful, 7 damage, gain 2, 9 damage. Spectral Assault, this is going to be your extreme value engine. This is what you want to roll for. Gain a Dreadful, then deal 8 damage and roll 1 per Dreadful, up to 5 total to do additional damage, or Undefendable or Grim Pursuit. So if you can be at that magic number of 4 Dreadful, this is where this is just going to start popping off and doing a ton of damage. Horrify is your mini ult, which is actually really strong. Gain 3 or gain Grim Pursuit. If you have the Haunted Head, do both of these and then deal 6 Undefendable. And then lastly, your defense is kind of unique. Hallowed Reckoning. Defensive roll. So you roll 1 dice plus 1 more for each Dreadful up to 5. And again, this is why you want to try and count to 4. If you have 4 Dreadful on your board at the end of your turn, you're going to be rolling 5 dice on your defense. That is your goal. And then when it comes back over to you, you're going to terrorize your opponent on the upkeep phase. That's really kind of the magic number of 4, is it gives you the best defense and then adds additional value during your upkeep phase during the terrorizing the opponent. Deal 1, prevent 1, gain a Dreadful. The ultimate is 4 Dreadful, 14 Undefendable damage. Over some of the unique cards and then some of the upgrade cards. We will start with the unique cards over here. So these are all relatively good. Let's just go down one by one. In Unescapable is you remove a Grim Pursuit to make this attack undefendable. Very good. Dark Surprise automatically is going to stabilize your Dreadful if you're off, or if you're not at 4, if you want to get to 4, etc. This is when you would want to use Dark Surprise. So if you're at 2 and your opponent's attacking into you, you can use this card to gain 2 more Dreadful to get to 4 to make your defense that much stronger. Cranial Assist is just 3 more damage, which is really great. Spirited Reprisal is prevent 3 if you have the Haunted Head. This is one you want to save for when you're really going to need it to prevent that 3 damage from dying. Dancing Pumpkin is if you have the head, gain 2 Dreadful, otherwise gain 2 Pursuits. Rolling Pumpkin, move the Haunted Head to a chosen player. And then Thundering Hooves, spend up to 3 CP to gain Grim Pursuits. Out of all of these, the best cards are going to be Cranial Assist, Dark Surprise, Unescapable, and Spirited Reprisal, with the rest of these being relatively situational based on what you need from the game. Going over to the upgrades, most of these are going to be good, right? Most of these are actually going to be pretty strong upgrades. Let's talk about Cleave first. This one's actually a really, really good one to upgrade because it turns into deal 8 damage and you gain a Dreadful on 3 of a kind. And this is just a huge value engine if you can continually just roll for that max value Cleave with the Dreadful. Really, really strong. As well as the Ghostly Charge is a reasonably good upgrade, or fallback, I should say, if you're chasing other things. This really kind of helps prevent you from whiffing a little bit more if you're trying to chase things like Spectral Assault and things like that. So this is never a bad thing to have, and the Cleave upgrade is really, really strong. Ride Down is okay. You know, the Grim Pursuit and the Cursed Gallop, like Cursed Gallops is honestly almost just as bad as whiffing, because whiffing you gain a pursuit, so this is just adding 1 undefendable damage, so it's not really that good. And then Ride Down is fine, but this isn't one that I would necessarily upgrade for 2 CP. Reap is something that you can definitely upgrade. This is going to be your engine for getting your Dreadfuls back after terrorizing your opponent, and it can be very, very strong, gives you access to draw. The Reaper is really, really strong, however it's slightly harder to get to. But this is an upgrade that's definitely worthwhile, especially early game. Spectral Assault, extremely strong. There is only one additional damage here, and then you get access to Haunted Strike. But this is just one that's going to be strong and valuable because you're going to want to be chasing this and doing this all the time. Horrify is actually a really good upgrade. It solves the problem of picking Dreadful or Grim Pursuit. You just get both automatically, which is great. And then Spooky is just, again, more access. So if you're chasing the Spectral or the Horrify, it gives you a little bit of a safety net of a fallback for Grim Pursuits and 7 damage, which is not terrible. So Despair is fine, or so Despair 2 is fine. One thing with this is you want to really be at that 4 Dreadful, and sometimes when you're getting to 4, doing 2 or 3 is a little bit awkward. So it's fine because it gets you the extra stuff and no one's going to be mad about that, but it's not necessarily something that you absolutely have to upgrade or chase or get to win the game. And then lastly, same with the defense. This really just gives you a little bit more security with your dice roll if you don't have the right amount of Dreadful, and then access to a Grim Pursuit. The better you get with Horsemen, the worse this upgrade becomes because this is all just really Dreadful management. I would upgrade everything else on here before I would upgrade this defense. So let's go ahead and hop into game plan. Game plan on the Headless Horseman is really about your pumpkin head management, right? That's the real skill. So you're going to default toss the Haunted Head back and forth early game to get the fastest amount of Dreadful growth possible. Once you hit 3 Dreadful on your board, right, consider leaving the head on your opponent to avoid awkwardly overstacking and the lineup being at perfect 4. So you don't want to bring it back and then overstack, etc. So you're really trying to get to 4 Dreadful. That is the goal. Counting to 4 repeatedly is how you're going to get good with the Horseman. Exactly 4 Dreadful gives you the best defense. Then when they pass back over to you on your upkeep, you're going to Terrorize and then build your Dreadful engine right back up. And you always will spend Grim Pursuit first for attack damage, not for roll attempts. Only do roll attempts if you really need to. So the game plan, or I guess the default offensive roll phase priority, is you're always going to want to prioritize Spectral Assault. If it's close and you can protect it, this is going to be your go-to ability all the time. After that, pick the ability that gets you to a perfect 4 Dreadful, right? So if you're at 3 Dreadful, right, and you know, obviously prioritize this, but if you're not there, Reap gets you over 4, which is not necessarily where you want to be, and you don't really need that. So this is where you can prioritize the So Despair, or if you have the upgraded Cleave with the 3 of a kind 8 damage, to get to that 4 exact Dreadful count while dealing damage. Because at this, when they swing back into you, you get to roll 5 dice, and then you would remove them during the upkeep to terrorize your opponent and gain all of the benefits of doing that. So you're really just trying to basically get to 4 Dreadful at the end of every one of your turns, potentially, to get the max value out of Spectral Assault, your defense, and then your Terrorize, right? So a good common rule of thumb, right? If we're basing this, like, imagine this as a cheat sheet. If I am at 0 or 1 Dreadful, I want to prioritize Reap to get the Dreadful up as quickly as possible. 0 or 1, prioritize Reap. If you can, if the dice are getting extra spicy, Horrify is also a really good one to go for here if you have it. At 2 Dreadful, once again, this is where you want to prioritize Reap, because this is often going to get you to the 4 Dreadful you need to set up for the defense and then the upkeep. At 3 Dreadful, this is where you're going to prioritize the straights. Straights are going to be really good at 3 Dreadful. This is where you would prioritize this. And then at 4 or 5 Dreadful, this is where you can really go to Ride Down to gain the Grim Pursuits and add the damage, because you don't need any more Dreadfuls here. You could also, obviously, rule number 1, always go for Spectral Assault. After that, you're going to want to manage your Dreadful count and play with what your Dreadfuls are getting you to that 4, that magic number of 4. So let's go ahead and do a couple of roll examples. So at the start of the game, right, if you are not going first to begin the game, gain a Dreadful. So you're going to start the game with the Dreadful. Let's go ahead and do this. We're going to shuffle these cards. Yep, there we go. Shuffle these cards back into the deck. Shuffle, shuffle, shuffle. Draw 4, and then we're going to take off. Now, this is actually a really good starting hand because we did get the upgraded cleave. We also got the triple up. Wow, this hand's actually kind of cracked. So we're going to triple up first, which I always suggest to do if you grab it, because now you can start selling stuff to find what you need. Reap early game is not a terrible upgrade because you do want to get the Dreadful Engine, the Undefendable, especially if you're going into a hero that has really strong defense, and we have the head on us, right? So during your upkeep, you may choose to terrorize an opponent or move the head. If you move it to an opponent, gain a Dreadful. So we actually would have moved that, and we still would have had the Dreadful, because if you're not going first to begin the game, gain a Dreadful, then during our upkeep, we're going to move it to him and then gain that other Dreadful because we moved it. So we're already at 2 Dreadful, which is why Reap is really kind of that sweet spot of what we want to get. So upgrading the Reap doesn't sound too shabby. So I'm actually going to sell this, and I'm going to sell this to upgrade my Reap. So I would gain 2 from the sell, and then I would sell the 2, and now my objective is to go for Reap. Okay, here we go. 1, 2, 4, 5, 6. We didn't quite get there, but we are really close to Reap. Let's see what happens. Okay, roll 2. We're going to go for Reap. Usually that's going to get through. So now we're at that magic number of 4 Dreadful. We've dealt 4 undefendable damage, and the head is not on us because we threw it to get to that extra Dreadful, so we will not draw a card from that. But 4 undefendable and having the Dreadful is really, really strong because it makes our defense completely upgraded. And then it gives us the upkeep Terrorize, which is really where we're going to start getting a lot of our damage engine. So, opponent is going to swing into us, and now we're going to roll 1 plus 1 more for each Dreadful. So I'm actually rolling all 5 dice here on my defense. And we're going to hit back for 2, prevent 1, and gain another Dreadful. There you go. So let's just say we prevented 1. So let's just say he was swinging at us for 7. So we would take 6. We'd hit him back for 2, and we would gain a Dreadful. Really good roll, almost perfect roll there for our defense based on what that is. Okay. So now they pass it back over to us, and this is where the Headless Mayhem comes in. During your upkeep, you may choose one. We are going to terrorize our opponent. So during your upkeep, you may spend at least 4 Dreadful, 1, 2, 3, 4. Move the Haunted Head to your hero board, deal 3 isolated damage undefendable, gain a Grim Pursuit, and a CP. And we just did 3 damage for that. Now we're going to gain another CP and draw, and we're feeling pretty good. We have Inescapable to remove the Grim Pursuit if we want to make it undefendable, but this is also one where we could upgrade the Cleave. But again, at 0 to 1 Dreadful, Reap is really our bread and butter. Horrify is our spicy line. I'm going to sell this to go up to 3 CP and then go into that offensive roll phase. 2, 3, 4, 5. It's not terrible. It is not terrible, but it's not necessarily the Reap that we wanted, especially with the head on our board. So now with my dice and with what I have, I don't really have many ways to protect this, so I might get a little frisky here. I'm going to take the 4, 2, and 3 and throw these back and see what happens. Okay. Not ideal. Not ideal. Now we do have the Grim Pursuit for the additional offensive roll phase, so we're going to do this one more time. Oh my goodness, roll 3. We get the Reaper. My opponent may mod this, but if they don't mod this, we're going to go ahead and lock in the Reaper. Fantastic upgrade. And guess what? We are now at that magic number of 4 Dreadful again, and then 4 more undefendable into our opponent. And we are going to spend the Grim Pursuit here. And the Grim Pursuit is an attack modifier. So I'm going to roll all 5 of these, and we're going to deal 2 more damage. So that is 6 undefendable damage. Our defense is set up. We drew a card, and then we're set up to terrorize for 3 more on this next turn. We also drew into a double up, so we are going to spend that in immediately to draw 2 more cards. And these are pretty good. I'm probably going to sell better D, go up to 3, and then I'm going to pass. Now it goes over to my opponent. Let's say they're going to swing into me. I get to roll 5 defensive dice again because I have 1 plus the 4 Dreadful, and we're going to hit them back for 3 and then gain another Dreadful. Pretty good. So then let's just say we're going to take 7 there. Let's just say 8. We didn't prevent anything, so we took a little bit more there. Okay, so now they pass over to us. We're going to spend the 4 dreadful to terrorize, hitting them for 3, gaining a pursuit and a CP, and then gaining a CP and drawing to start our turn. And that is really how you play the Headless Horseman. Let's do one more and see if we can push for Spectral Assault. Although, again, at 0 to 1 Dreadful, I would really kind of be playing the Horrify and the Reap line. So let's push for Horrify. Let's actually do this. We're going to upgrade Horrify. And we don't have any dice mods, which is kind of ironic. We'll do Vegas, baby, gain 2, and then we'll roll. Here we go. 3, 4, 5, 6 is not bad. You know what? I know I said I was going to push for it. We also have Reap, so let's just go Reap here. So we're going to gain the 2 Dreadful there. 1, 2. And then 4 Undefendable, and we still have the head on us. Actually, sorry. At the start of my turn, I was supposed to throw the head onto him, so we'd actually be here. My apologies. So Reap is the perfect play there. We would not draw a card, and then we would do 4 Undefendable. We're going to add the Grim Pursuit to add 2 more. So 6 Undefendable. They're going to swing into us with our 5 dice roll. We're going to hit them back for 4 and gain a Dreadful. And then we're going to terrorize back on our turn, bringing the pumpkin back, hitting them for 3, gaining a Grim Pursuit and a CP, then a CP, and drawing a card. Woo! And that is how you play the Headless Horseman. Thank you guys for watching, and don't be afraid to like, comment, and subscribe. Back to Undefendable. If you didn't catch my previous Raveness guide, you can go check this one out, or go check that one out, but I'm going to do a real quick one here to cap off the end of the Outcasts hero chest bundle Kickstarter, etc. Raveness, she's just a mid-range control bully disguised as a fair hero. Your damage doesn't look wildly intimidating just on the board, but with Nevermore feathers, Nevermore die rolls, and hexes, and Foul Friend, if you can upgrade it, she is going to be absolutely devastating. I'm not going to go over her leaflet too in detail, but ultimately Nevermore, you want to put it on your opponent and you want to start pinging them for damage and then bring it back over to you, and whatever damage is left on it, you would actually heal for that amount. When Nevermore is on your opponent, they must roll a die at the beginning of their upkeep phase and then do whatever this die roll says. On a 1, they gain Hex, which means all of their 6s are blank dice, and then so on and so forth. Ideally, you're going to want them to roll a 1, 2, or 3, preferably 1 or 2, but also 4 and 5 are really strong because you can steal CP or have them discard a card. Feathers are just how you can manipulate your Raven. You can make the Nevermore dice roll go up and down. You can have them re-roll the dice roll, or you can even activate Nevermore in a pinch. For instance, if it's on them and they have 3 and you're on death's door, and you have 3 feathers and you're going to take 10 damage and you only have 9 health, you can spend 3 feathers, right? Because you can do it at any time. You can spend 3 feathers, bring it back to you, and heal for 3 to save yourself, which is kind of cool. And then Hex, a player afflicted with this token must treat all of their die faces with a 6 as if those faces are completely blank, meaning you cannot get a straight with a 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. All of your 6s on your board are no longer relevant when a Hex is on you. So she is going to be very, very strong into opponents that lean on 6s, like Spider-Man or Rogue, or even the Headless Horseman, who we just saw right before this guide. So very, very strong. She has a 3-2-1 facing die with talons, wings, and raven eyes. Let's go over her cards real quickly. Broken Stillness is very strong. One thing I learned over the weekend is you can actually, if you're going second and this is in your hand, you can actually use this at the start of the game to get Nevermore onto your opponent and make them roll the Nevermore die roll before they even take their turn. So that actually, I was Spider-Man and they counterpicked Raveness. They did this at the start of the game, and then I rolled a 1 and got hexed on my first turn as Spider-Man, which was absolutely disgusting. Cool, extremely strong, change the value of any Nevermore die, very good. Nevermore attack, activate Nevermore, then choose if the player that Nevermore is on heals 2 or receives 2. So you can either ping your opponent for 3 damage, Or if Nevermore is on your opponent at 3, because 3 is the stack limit, you could activate Nevermore, bring it back to you, heal for 3, and then once again heal 2 more from the Nevermore attack card, which is kind of strong as well. This should be over here. Sorry about that. Stonebeak, very strong, makes your attack undefendable and adds 1 damage. So if you're missing Foul Friend? Yeah. You can use this in a pinch. Talon Strike just makes your attack stronger and you gain a feather. And then Midnight Drury, really strong, helps you get your feathers back and hopefully activate Nevermore once, which can be really, really good. As for her upgrades here, Beguile is her large straight, but it also gives you access to Pluck. Pluck is extremely strong because it inflicts Hex. This is a very, very strong one, especially if you're going to be chasing Foul Friend a lot. This is an upgrade that I would definitely recommend. The other one I would recommend is Foul Friend 2. Absolutely disgusting. At 3 feathers, you could win the game just by continually casting this, and you shouldn't have much trouble getting it. Very, very, very strong. And then her defense is really strong too. It just gives you more consistency of dealing damage back and preventing damage, and activating Nevermore, so really good as well. Your small straight is going to be your fallback if you're not getting Foul Friend, so I would recommend upgrading this because it's really good. And then the rest of them, no, and maybe. It just depends on the style of game and the opponent that you are playing. All right, let's go over her abilities really quickly. I think I was supposed to do that before the cards, but that's okay. We did it backwards. All right, we'll zoom in on this. We got Peck. Foul Friend, this is your bread and butter. This is what you want to roll every turn if you can. Murder of Crows is usually your fallback off of Foul Friend. Raven Sight, if you're seeing a lot of 6s and Foul Friend seems too far out of reach, this is going to be a really consistent one that still gets you to activate Nevermore and keep that consistency going while doing additional damage. Craven is usually your fallback if Murder of Crows isn't there and Foul Friend is whiffing. Craven is really strong, especially if it's upgraded. If you roll into Beguile, obviously take the large straight, but you don't need to be chasing this or Chamber. And then your defense is really strong. Big difference between the defense and the upgraded one is instead of on 2, it's just 1 and you deal 1, which is really good because you can actually end up dealing more on that upgrade, right? So that's the 2 big differences there, is you're actually dealing 1 per instead of having to deal 2 on 2. You could potentially do 3 damage, and it just gives you just a little bit more consistency with some of the damage. So, yeah. That is Raveness in a nutshell. Early game, you just want to get the crow on your opponent as much as you can, because if the Raven's on them at the start of their turn, they have to roll the Nevermore die. So you really only want the Raven on you to heal and then send it immediately back to your opponent before their turn starts so that they have to roll the Nevermore die. Let's go ahead and show you a few turns so we can walk through it. Before we get into the rolls, let's go over matchups and then just like really quick strategy. Matchup wise, Raveness is going to be strong versus heroes who need their 6s and high-end roll objectives. Hex just wrecks their consistency and is absolutely extremely strong. But she will be weak versus heroes who don't care about Hex and heroes that can just play solid low-end turns while still being able to pressure her. So that's the big thing, is if you're playing against someone who needs 6s to really pop off, Raveness is going to be really strong. I will say she does have potentially 2 lines of playstyles here. So the first one is, if you need to be maybe more aggressive potentially, she does have an aggressive line where you don't lean into Foul Friend. You could lean into more like damage control based opportunities, like Craven and Murder of Crows. So if you need to go fast and just let Nevermore just do chippy damage. But then she also has a more control side where you're going to prioritize Hex and Pluck if you upgrade for Pluck, to shut down the best roll objectives of your opponent, and then just continually use this to peck away and continually heal over the time and use your defense to get that extra value. So couple of last tips: don't ever end your turn with Nevermore on you. You always want it on them. Always try to have feathers available, because you can, unfortunately, get stuck with situations where Nevermore could have been more valuable, and if you had one feather, it could have changed the outcome of the game. And yeah, just get the bird on them quickly. Foul Friend is your go-to. Raven Sight is your backup. If whiffing, use unique cards that activate Nevermore to get the engine online as well. So let's go ahead. These are already shuffled. We'll go ahead and do this and draw 4. And yeah, we did get the Beguile, which is pretty good. So let's go ahead and upgrade Beguile, because I want access to that pluck. I'm going to sell this, and then we are going to go ahead and roll. Now again, my objective roll 1 or turn 1 is to get this Raven on them, so I need to find a way to activate Nevermore. And this is kind of what I was talking about earlier, is sometimes Foul Friend seems a little bit more crazy, so Raven Sight's a good fallback, but Pluck also doesn't seem as wildly crazy here, right? Okay, so we're a little closer, but this is still a little scary. And without a dice mod, I may potentially just try and roll for Raven Sight, but for the purposes of the video, let's see if we can get the Pluck. We whiff. Again, not what I normally would have done. What I normally would have done if in that scenario is probably throwing those back. Okay, that obviously wouldn't happen, and probably went with Raven Sight. But let's just assume we pulled off Pluck. So we're going to inflict our opponent with that, and then deal 9 defendable damage. Now, unfortunately, we did not get the Raven on him, which is probably why Raven Sight might have actually been a good option there, because it could have activated it and moved it over to my opponent. But Pluck with the Hex on them is totally fine. Let's just say they come back at us. We're going to roll defense. So we would hit them back for doing prevent 2. So likely we're going to be taking about 5. Hex goes away at the end of their turn. I would gain a CP and draw a card. Okay, so I am actually going to upgrade Raven Sight as my backup. And I'm shooting for Foul Friend here. And then Raven Sight's going to be my backup. Although Pluck also isn't a bad option, and we get Pluck again. So we're going to inflict them with Hex and then deal 9 damage. So this is more of a race game at this point. We haven't activated Nevermore once yet, which is kind of funny. But we've done potentially 18 damage and hexed them twice. So they're feeling the pressure not having that additional 6s on their board. They're going to swing back at us. We are going to prevent 2 damage. And I'm just going to say we're going to take 4 here. Because Hex is probably going to be giving them trouble. CP draw. We're getting all of our upgrades, apparently. I am just going to go ahead and roll here, trying to get Foul Friend. All right, we'll keep the 5s. Oh, let's just go one more. Here we go. All right, we didn't get it, but we did get a... Oh, no, we didn't even get the small straight. So we're going to fall back to Murder of Crows. So that's going to be 5 damage, and I'm going to roll 4 dice. We will activate Nevermore. So Nevermore is now on them. Woohoo! And then we're doing 7 damage. So over the span of those 3 turns, we did 25 damage with 2 plucks and a Murder of Crows. We hexed them twice, and now Nevermore is on them for that roll. Okay? So now at the beginning of their roll, or upkeep, since Nevermore's on them, they would roll a die. On a 5, that opponent loses 1 CP, then Raveness gains 1 CP. Okay? Wait, did I have a feather there too? Did I have a feather or 2 on that roll? I don't remember. Let's just assume I had 2 feathers, because I think I had 2. I don't remember. But now, so if I'm like, oh man, that 5 is actually pretty good. I don't need the CP. They're blah, blah, blah. I can either spend 2 feathers to lower it to a 4 and have them discard a card, or I can spend 1 and just have them re-roll altogether. 6 is bad. Reduce Nevermore's die to 0, then return it to Nevermore. We don't want that, so we're going to spend another feather and have them roll. They roll a 4, and they're going to have to discard a card. So you can see where the control element comes in. We hex them twice, blanking all their 6s for 2 turns, and then they even have to discard a card here and then swing back into us. They're going to swing into us, we're going to roll, we're going to hit them back for 2, and then we're going to take, let's just say 7. Now this is where if we did the upgraded defense, we would have dealt 4 back to them, because we would have had 4 of the spikies, which is good. All right, we're going to Vegas, baby. This will be the last turn. gain 3 CP, very nice. With that, we might as well upgrade this because we're CP rich, and then we're going to roll. And I am still looking to activate Foul Friend because I still think that is one of the stronger abilities. If I fall into Pluck, if I fall into a large straight, sure, but I am looking to activate Foul Friend. I am looking to activate Foul Friend. There we go. Foul Friend. Draw 1, gain 4 feathers, and then activate Nevermore twice. And since Nevermore is on my opponent, when it activates twice, they actually take 2 damage there. And we could potentially activate this to deal another damage in 2. But what I want to do is I want to show you that combo I was talking about before. So we're going to pass it over to our opponent, who's going to roll for the Nevermore die. Ooh, they roll the 1, so now they're hexed. Oh, man. And let's just say we helping hand them, and they end up whiffing, which is really, really great for us. So we are going to gain the CP and draw. And now I have a lot of feathers. Nevermore's already on them. Foul Friend is still pretty good here. But this is where you can maybe start to get a little bit more aggressive because you have the control element on top of this. I'm still totally fine with Foul Friend if it comes up, but I'm also fine with a small straight, right? This is actually pretty good here. This may be a situation where I roll 1 more to see if I can get the 5. Look at that. And we would announce that we are going to do Beguile, which is actually great that this happened because I have 4 feathers. I would gain 3 on this. So I can actually elect to spend 3 feathers, 1, 2, 3, to activate Nevermore to ping them for 1. And then gain 3 feathers. So I don't have to worry about overstacking because I can activate that at any time. So I ping them for 1 with Nevermore, and now I'm going to activate Nevermore 2 more times. And this is how I'm going to do this. I'm just going to leave it on them and ping them for 2 more damage. I cannot go over 3, but I can leave it on them to ping them for damage instead of having to bring it back and then go back onto them. So I'm going to just ping them for 1, 2 more damage. So I've already done 3 damage outside of the 9 that's coming at them from the actual attack, which is really, really cool. So then they're going to defend for 9, so on and so forth. And now I want to activate my Nevermore attack, which is actually ironic because it's not attacking. It's going to activate Nevermore. I'm going to bring Nevermore back to me, drain its essence for 3, so I heal for 3. And then the player that Nevermore is on heals for 2 or receives 2 damage. So I just healed for 5 with this card. And remember, I want Nevermore to be on my opponent at the start of their turn. So now I'm going to spend 3 feathers and move it back over to them so they have to do that Nevermore die roll again. And I still have a feather just in case they roll a 6, right? And that is how you play Raveness. Thank you guys so much for watching. Feel free to like, comment, and subscribe. I really appreciate it. And I'll catch you guys next time.